Hi there, welcome to my video for the 11th week of lockdown. I can't believe it's been 2.5 months we've been doing this, sort of stuck at home mostly, working from home. Now nearly always the weather on a Saturday morning when I record these videos is absolutely beautiful. This is I think only the second weekend where it's not been very good. I mean, it's not horrendous, it's not that cold, it's sort of a bit fresher than it has been, of course. And my new pet hate is wind, because that usually causes my collinear to sort of thrash around above the tree, which it really was doing until I reduced the height of it a couple of weeks ago. It's been thrashing around a little bit this morning, not too bad right now. My video this week is going to be about antennas mostly. As most of you know, my radio club, Harwell Amateur Radio Society, have a sked on a Friday night that starts on top band and then QSYs to 80 meters. And when I had access to my second station in Abingdon, the G5RV matched to my radio perfectly, because I had about 60 meters of coax attached to it, which increased the capacitance. I don't know, but it matched perfectly and I was able to use it. I've tried to replicate the same thing here, but it sort of doesn't work really. I can get the G5RV to match, but the problem is that if you go above about 20 watts TX power, the MFJ starts lighting up, arcing, which basically means that it's having to work very, very hard indeed to present 50 ohms to the radio, which means that basically as an antenna, one is that the TX power would be very low. Two, it's just basically very, very inefficient. So that didn't work. But the beauty of being a club member is that you have access to people who have been doing this sort of stuff and trying to solve these sorts of problems for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years even. And on the sked on the sked a week ago last night, I got talking to two of them afterwards on 2 meters, and they basically said, you know, what you want to do is you just want to sort of like throw up, you know, a quarter wave length of wire, just run it along the fence and put a ground rod in or put a counterpoise in. So, and they said, you know, one of them had tried it and he got sort of modest results. So I sort of said to that guy, really? And they were like, yeah, just try it. So anyway, the next morning I did a click and collect for Screwfix in Witney and bought a ground rod and a clamp for like £4.50. I already had 200 meters of equipment wire that I got from Maplin's free when they closed down in Oxford, in Botley Road, a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, whenever it was. And so I got the ground rod home, watered the corner of the grass and hammered it in, no problem. There it is. And I ran the actual wire, the antenna, around this fence, basically. It's quite a long fence actually, and then down the bottom in a sort of L shape, about 5 feet above the ground, 6 feet above the ground, and did a test with one of the guys, and he actually copied me in sort of Abingdon, which I thought was actually quite amazing. I then put in 25 ground radials last weekend, all in sort of groups of 5 meters long, and then buried them on Sunday, because that just basically looks a right mess. Not that that sort of particularly matters too much, but it also makes it a bit more permanent. And I ran another test with another Harwell guy who's in Kingston Bagpues, and he copied me as 5 and 6. No problem at all. His suggestion was to raise the height of the antenna, which I then did by using just some plastic rods that I had lying around. So now the antenna, instead of being sort of 5 or 6 feet above the ground, is now sort of 10, 12 feet above the ground. I did another test with that guy in Kingston Bagpues, and he copied me as 5 and 9, so which was amazing. And then since then, I've put in 3 quarter wave radials. So I've put in 3 additional radios that aren't buried, that are 36.5 meters long, and one of them runs in this direction, down the side of the house, out into the front, down the drive, which is that distance. Well, the distance to the front of my property is actually in excess of 36 meters. So, but it runs out in that direction. And then there's a second that runs basically around the garden and down the side of the house. And then the third basically runs perpendicular along the edge of the patio and then down this side of the house, down there. So there you go. So So there's 3 quarter wave radials now. I'm going to go inside now because there's no need to stand outside. It's not very warm. So last night we had another sked, and after that we spoke again on 2 meters, and I ran another test with the guys there, and basically they were copying me. A guy in Abingdon, another Harwell amateur radio guy, was copying me in Abingdon with using 40 watts. He was copying me 10/9 with 40 watts, which is a very, very good result. We did a little power test actually, so I started cranking down the power and he was actually recording my signal and then playing it back to me. And what's interesting is that the difference in my signal, in how he copied me from 40 watts down to 5 watts, was probably only half an S unit. Literally, you know, he could still copy me perfectly well using 5 watts into this top band antenna as he could with me using 40 watts. With 40 watts I was 10/9. I think with 10 watts I was still 5/9, and with 5 watts I was still almost sort of just 5/9. So that actually demonstrates that this antenna is actually working pretty efficiently actually. So, you know, so this weekend I'm basically going to be spending a bit more time disproving the sort of general consensus, I think, that, you know, to get on top band you need a big expensive antenna, because you don't. I've spent £4.50 in total, and even if I'd had to buy the wire, the whole lot would have cost me about 22 quid, which, so, you know, when you talk about having to, you know, get on top band. I mean, I was looking at, I've been doing some research for a few weeks, as you guys know. I mentioned it in my previous video, and you know, delta loops and sky loops, you know, 160 meters of wire and God knows what. I mean, it's pretty scary stuff. So it just goes to show that with a bit of experimentation and you know, and a bit of a push from your friends, you know, it's possible to build an antenna that will work for almost next to nothing. So anyway, I've been testing it, and I will continue testing it on FT8 this weekend. And if you look here, so this is with 40 watts. I was doing this last night. I actually fell asleep doing it, and but you can see that my signal was decoded. I've made several contacts actually on the 160 meters using this antenna in the past couple of days. If you look, my signal being decoded down into the Iberian Peninsula, throughout Central Europe, into Scandinavia, and into kind of I was going to say that's European Russia, but is that actually European Russia, or is that Lithuania? Yeah, into Lithuania. Yeah, into Lithuania. So you know, I'm pretty happy with that. You know, at the end of the day, as a function of performance, well, if performance is a function of cost, you know, that's where I've been decoded on top band with an antenna that, like I said, has cost me less than 5 quid. So I'm going to continue to test this antenna over the weekend on FT8. The guys have kindly offered to run further tests. It's quite interesting actually, because they were all very, very keen to help. Which is great. It's what you need to kind of like prove or demonstrate the effectiveness of that antenna, because, you know, it's a well-known thing in ham radio circles that if you want to get on top band, generally it's considered to be a difficult thing to do because of the, you know, quite stringent requirements for an antenna, you know, to work at 160 meters. So to have done it with an antenna that's cost less than a fiver, I think that was of interest to everybody that I spoke to about it, but it was also of interest to the 2 guys that were kind of inspiring me to do it in the first place. Excuse me while I take a slurp of coffee. So yeah, so this weekend I'm going to be mostly disproving the general sort of consensus that you need a big expensive antenna on top band. One thing I've given up on is and I'm doing something different now, is that last couple of weekends I mentioned to you guys that I was using the Elad FTM Duo for doing some sort of ham radio QRP stuff. I did do that, and I actually worked a station in Russia, but it was such hard work for two reasons. One is that when the bands are really busy, it's just really difficult to be heard, you know, and that, you know, I guess, you know, for a while that can be sort of fun, you know, as a challenge, but it just becomes tedious. The fact that, you know that you could switch radios and use, you know, 10 times the amount of power, but you're trying to run sort of QRP. So it did. So that part of it became tedious. But what also became way more tedious is the ergonomics on the ELAD, using the ELAD as a sort of standalone radio. You know, that is pretty tedious, and for whatever reason, when I try to use it with the computer and I'm transmitting, it basically crashes the software. Now that's an RF problem, because it doesn't do it if I run 1 watt, but anything above 1 watt and my computer's crashing. So I think I need more protection for the computer, you know, ferrite cores or whatever. You know, nevertheless, it was a good experiment. So it was a good way of sort of demonstrating that that you can run QRP and contact, you know, and do DX. As I said, the guys at the at Harwell Amateur Radio Society were pretty impressed with my contact of a station sort of west of Moscow, using, you know, 5 watts, less than 5 watts ERP, you know, obviously into a compromised antenna. So, but it does go to show that you can work DX on low power. So, but this weekend, I'm using the ELAD with a different purpose. Haven't used it actually for quite a long time, because I've sort of been, I was going to say tied up, but that's actually not correct, because I've been basically using the SDR Play RSP Duo and RSP DX now since last year, and those two SDRs are superb receivers, and as you know, I've traveled with them, and I think particularly the RSP DX on medium wave, as a function of performance, is probably in my experience, my best performing SDR on medium wave for DX. Is it better than the ELAD? I don't know, but it's very close. Is it a better product than the ELAD? If you're measuring performance as a function of price, 100%. The RSP DX is a better radio than the ELAD, because it costs about a quarter of the price, and the performance is as near as, damn it, identical, certainly identical to the point whereby it makes no difference. So, but one piece of the one thing the ELAD does do better than the RSP DX is the record function. Now, don't get me wrong, the RSP DX does allow you to record the whole, you know, the medium wave band, but the way that the ELAD does this, where you actually can set up a schedule. Now, I might be being unfair, you might be able to do this in the RSP DX now. They may have upgraded the SDR Uno software, but the way that you do this in the ELAD has always been brilliant, and this is the way that I've always been recording the medium wave band for, you know, analysing afterwards. You literally start time, stop time, and date. Do you want to repeat it, or is it one time? Demodulation, the LO frequency, tune frequency, you know, etc. And you just put those in, and each recording of the band is one line. But you can, for example, you know, you can make this daily, so you can set this up and it will do it every day. So you don't even have to keep replacing or adding in new recordings. And it just struck me that I hadn't done any. I hadn't recorded the medium wave band for quite a long time. Now isn't really the time of year for doing that, but looking through the channel last year, I remember actually catching quite a lot of very good medium wave DX in the middle of summer. So although it's not the season, it is still possible to catch medium wave DX, and for me, the best way to do that is to use the ELAD FDM Duo, which is over there. So that's what. So I'm going to do some of that this weekend. And the other thing actually is that I do like recording, obviously, medium wave DX on my communications receivers and some portables. And it's always useful actually to have an SDR, because it's quicker to have this SDR spectrum running sort of most of the time in the evening, and then just literally having a sort of flick through the band and actually looking at the signals, and then finding something interesting. And then I know you guys, and I do, actually like to hear what these signals sound like on proper radios, so to speak. So I'm gonna be doing that as well. The other thing I did was I got the anyone remember this radio? The Eaton Satellite. I bought this radio, wow, I don't know, three or 4 years ago. I bought this radio 3 or 4 years ago, and at the time it had a pretty terrible reputation. One of the sort of big wigs on big guns on YouTube with radio, one of the bigger radio channels had got hold of one, or was it a website, I can't remember, and had sort of done a sort of test, had done a review basically, and said it was rubbish. And but I had seen a single video from one of my YouTube subscribers who had done something pretty amazing with it, and I just thought, do you know what, I'm going to buy that radio, and I bought it. And basically I think I helped turn around the reputation of that radio, because I took it all over the world with me and copied. I can still remember one of the first stations I copied on that radio was ABC Northern Territories, and with a really, really nice signal down in the woods. And that, I think that was the start of it really, and then it just went from there. So I got that right. So I'm going to have a go. I'm going to use this radio this weekend, the Eaton Satellite, and no doubt that'll bring back some memories. And if I hear something good with it, I'll post a video. So there you go. So that's it. So that's the end of another lockdown video. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Like I keep saying, at the end of the day, we're fortunate to have a hobby that allows us to stay at home and do something interesting. And I've certainly had quite a bit more time to spend experimenting with radios, etc. And it never gets old for me. And as long as we are in lockdown, I'll continue doing these videos. They seem to be pretty popular. The one I did last week has had over 500 views, which is way above the sort of average for the channel. So I'm going to do a channel update as well at some point, because we're getting towards 1 million hits, which is obviously absolutely amazing. And I never thought that would happen, but I'll do a separate video on that. But otherwise, that's me done for another weekend. I hope you all have a great weekend. I wish you all good DX, whether you're a shortwave listener or a radio ham or whatever it is. Keep safe, everybody, and I'll catch you around this time next weekend. Thanks for watching.